Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Doctor Strange. In terms of Marvel movies, Doctor Strange is probably the most visually interesting Marvel movie we've probably ever seen, especially in terms of special effects, which are usually shown to make Iron Man's suit or Hulk green or something like that, which is still cool, but isn't as awe-inspiring as this movie, and it's very different for a comic book movie. It's mind-bending and interdimensional and really even crazier than what you've seen in the TV ads. It's very, very mind-bending and crazy, and the kind of surrealist interdimensional imagery that Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby brought to Marvel Comics, and the kind of cool cosmic and mystical side of Marvel Comics that Marvel Studios hasn't really gotten into until this movie. And it's awesome to see that on the big screen. It's like the reason you go to the big screen. I didn't see this in 3D, but honestly, I would recommend you see it in 3D. Just imagining seeing the visuals in that just sounds like a worthwhile decision because of the amazing show you're going to get. But then the movie and the script itself feel like a bunch of other superhero origin stories we've seen before. So it's kind of an odd mixture of what's going on with Doctor Strange, because in one case, visually it does a lot of stuff that, not just special effects wise, but even how it's shot is a lot better than most Marvel movies. It feels a lot more dynamic. It almost feels like not a part of that universe while also being a part of it. It feels like how a comic book usually is, like how you have different illustrators for different comic books, but they're all within the same continuity. Doctor Strange feels that way very naturally, and it's really awesome. But then it feels like any other Marvel origin story. It feels like Iron Man, First Avenger, Thor, blueprint-wise, and that doesn't feel as interesting. It feels like kind of been there, done that. Now it's really good at it. I think Marvel Studios is better at making a really quality, big Hollywood movie than pretty much any studio going on right now. It's still a good movie and a decent blockbuster and everything, but it just doesn't feel as exciting anymore. And then maybe that's just the age of comic book movies we're in, where it used to be, I can't believe they got all these characters together, I can't believe they're pushing it to this length, I can't believe what they're doing with continuity, to the point where we've gotten to Doctor Strange, where even though they're doing a character that they've never done before and making it into a very poppy blockbuster type of movie with a character you never thought that someone could have the vision to make into a big poppy blockbuster movie, it just doesn't feel script-wise and story-wise really as exciting with what it's doing, even if the visuals whisk you away to different dimensions and on the astral plane. Your eyes might be there, but your mind's going like, this doesn't feel as exciting, but I'm just kind of with it and cool with it because it is quite an entertaining time. Stephen Strange, who is a brilliant surgeon who's quippy and kind of an asshole, until one day he's in a horrific car accident that ruins his hands and gives his hands like tremors and shakes, and so he can't be the brilliant rich surgeon that he once was, and he tries every experimental surgery and idea he can think of, but it doesn't work, and then spends pretty much his last time traveling to see ancient mystics to meet up with the Ancient One and Mordo to hopefully find a way to cure his hands, because he has heard from one patient who had as a horrific of an accident as he did and learned to walk and be able to use his hands again, and he found out where that guy went, which was in Nepal. So he goes there and meets with the Ancient One and Mordo and really goes to fix his hands, but eventually learns about the mystic arts and starts becoming very talented as he keeps learning them and taking out more and more books, to the chagrin of the librarian Wong. But at the same time, the evil Calicus, sorry, Dad. The evil guy, played by Mads Mikkelsen, with his master Dormammu, is trying to merge the Earth with the Dark Dimension. Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, and Mordo have to find a way to stop him, as Doctor Strange learns the mystic arts and becomes a more and more talented sorcerer. I think the thing that no one's going to really dispute is that the visuals in Doctor Strange are fucking amazing. They're just awe-inspiring how wonderful they are. And it is a little Inception Inception-y, and I think if you've seen the ads, they kind of sell the Inception-y parts. They go less into the weirdness of it, because it gets fucking weird in this movie in certain parts. There's a whole section I was like, wow, I'm just surprised at kind of the level of acid trippiness that they really got into. You don't really see that done and so naturally done, but also goes into the surreal oddness of the whole thing that I really, really love that. And that sequence was just beautifully done. It's probably the first time I actually want a Marvel film to win Best Visual Effects. It's probably some of the best visual effects I've seen, in that it's not just like, look, we created an army of things. I'm like, that's not interesting anymore. Some of the visuals in this are just hard to describe, like watching Doctor Strange fall into his own eye and then like grab onto the sides of it. Half the audience was talking about how they wanted to get high and watch this movie because it was just so trippy and odd and strange. Damn it, I was gonna try not to do that. Oh well. Just because those sequences are so trippy and surreal and just really kind of cool, I really love that about those sequences. The sequences that do remind me of Inception and Christopher Nolan are kind of like Inception, except if Christopher Nolan knew really how to have fun, which is like not something he's particularly good at. And I guess this is kind of like if The Prestige and Inception had a baby and wasn't a total bummer all the time. I like how it uses it, because at first when I saw it, I was like, I mean, that's cool, but it's not like incredibly cool. It's not like amazing and awe-inspiring the way I'm describing it. Then when you actually see the movie, you're like, actually, they did a pretty amazing job with it. It really raises the bar for comic book movie visual effects, which are usually just used for superheroes, supervillains, and things like that, not for setting. And the way they use it for setting and make kind of blow your mind that there are these other worlds, like mirror realms and other dimensions, and how the world works, and playing with time and made your imagination run wild with it. And it made it exciting, even if the story really wasn't. Even if it does feel like, how many of these superhero origin movies can we see? How many of the kind of the way it structures feels like a bunch of other movies we've seen before, but it flows so quickly and so well that I almost didn't really get a moment to think about that. I was so in it because it goes boom, 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 boom. I mean, you don't get much time with him before the accident, which had a nice little reference to Rhodey, War Machine from Civil War. So I guess this took place like right after Civil War or something, like the whole movie, which I thought took like a bunch of years or something, but Marvel. And I think the flow of it shows how good Marvel is at doing something like this. And part of me thinks, is it Marvel's fault necessarily that they've stuck to this structure? And although this film visually is very exciting and very interesting and something I'm not going to forget, story-wise, it doesn't feel as exciting. And it feels like a studio that really knows what it's doing, even if they are sort of kind of pushing themselves to another level. Story-wise, it doesn't. And I think Scott Dickerson's direction, he really directs the hell out of this thing. I think it's something that so many other directors have done, these kind of Marvel movies, like Kenneth Branagh in particular, where it's like, I feel like he got swallowed up by it. I don't know if it's Marvel's so good at being a studio that they can make these movies be pretty good and flow fairly well, even if they are staying to a particular structure or genre very rigidly. And the difference in comparison to their other movies shows that he definitely had a voice in there and really like kind of made this movie a lot more than what it was. It's just that it's so stuck within being a Marvel movie. That kind of didn't free it up, I think, for a lot of people. One thing that did help is it had a lot of great actors, particularly Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Although he is doing the kind of bland English guy doing an American accent kind of voice in this, it kind of worked for it a little bit. I think it worked for it. I liked how he portrayed Doctor Strange. It's a little different because it's not the Benedict Cumberbatch screen persona that we're used to, so it's a little odd. But I started ignoring that he was doing English guy doing an American accent type of thing. It is very much one of those type of voices. Chiwetel Ejiofor, him and even Rachel McAdams, who has like a nothing role, or Mads Mikkelsen, or plenty of actors who are in this, they didn't really have a lot to do, but they made the most of it, which I think is something that like Natalie Portman was never very good in the Thor movies. But in this, these are actors who clearly knew like, well, my 5 minutes of screen time is going to be played on Netflix a million times and on FX, so I better make it worth it so people actually sort of remember me. And it kind of felt like they were trying to earn it a little more. Scott Adkins, who is from like Ninja Shadow of a Tear and is like a VOD action star god or something, is in this. I feel like, was he like one of the bad guys' henchmen or something? I really don't know who he was in this. Like, I did not realize he was in it, and then the movie was over and I saw his name. I was like, what? But I'm gonna see it again, and I'll be able to figure out who he is. I think he was the guy he fought on the astral plane in the hospital, but I'm not sure. And I like the guy Benedict Wong who played Wong. He didn't get a ton to do, but a lot of this movie kind of sets itself up for a Doctor Strange series. You're like, I can't wait to see these guys in the next movie, you know, and I think a lot of that was going on in this, but we haven't gotten there yet. So, although I am sort of hyped for Doctor Strange too, I will say that. Tilda Swinton, I think, steals the show, but kind of predictably steals the show at this point. She's usually pretty much the movie stealer in most cases. She does a very good job of being like kind of a mythical person, since she is that herself anyway. It was great casting on Marvel's end. I really liked her as the Ancient One. It was a little weird having this whole film about mysticism, and particularly taking place in Asia a lot, but not having very many Asian people in this movie was, I think, maybe not great. I don't know if the character of the Ancient One would have worked the version in the comic book, and I guess they decided to just skirt the issue entirely by not having anyone, but I think in a way it makes it look like they're just trying to forget about it entirely, but in a way they're kind of like making the kind of white savior thing a little too much. But it's not overbearing in a way. It's just something, when you really think about it, you're like, wait a minute, did this guy go to Nepal and like only see other English speaking Americans? What's that about? Except for Tilda Swinton, of course. Except for Wong. Wong's like probably the only major cast member of the whole movie, so, which was a little ridiculous. But I think it's interesting. I haven't read that much Doctor Strange. My dad is a huge fan of Doctor Strange. I know enough about the origin and stuff, and as a kid it always felt very weighty and long and hard to get into. So I was actually surprised how well they got this to flow for a character who I'd never thought would really have a popular big blockbuster movie opening with him in it. And that to me is what makes the Doctor Strange movie special. He's not the kind of character, he's not the X-Men, he's not Spider-Man, he's not Captain America. He's not that kind of marquee kind of a character, and they make a very populous movie out of it. Now they often make it a little too funny in places, I thought. I know Dan Harmon did some rewrites on it. I don't know if that's his influence or not. It felt a little too much, but they are really trying to sell Doctor Strange as more of a funny Marvel type of character. Even if it is stuck within this kind of structure or genre of a Marvel movie, it still is doing a character who is unexpected to do, and it's still visually doing a lot of things that will just completely blow your mind in ways you didn't expect, and will make you wish that you had seen it in 3D so it could properly blow your mind all over again, and probably see that whole sequence again, because I mean that sequence was really a standout. It was just amazing. You didn't think Hollywood studios would really want to blow your mind with their visual spectacles like this, and I think Doctor Strange really did that in that sequence early on, and they did it in a few other sequences, particularly at the end, and having a playfulness with those sequences, but also like just an unpredictability with that you don't really see anymore. But it just sucks that the script felt predictable. It's kind of the odd thing about this Doctor Strange movie, because you could say, yes, it's still good. I don't think anyone's going to really disagree and say it's a bad movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just we've seen too many of these, and Marvel's made too many of these, and hell, they're frankly really good at making them, but it just feels like they're just kind of resting on their laurels at this point. But are they? I mean, it's not like it was an easy movie to make. Doctor Strange, this was something they had never done before. This is a character that isn't an easy character to make a mainstream movie out of, and somehow they did that. And maybe they almost did it too well, because it doesn't really feel like a different kind of an origin story. It feels like all the origin stories we saw before, but it's almost amazing they got Doctor Strange to actually be that. So I don't know if it is necessarily predictability on seeing a Marvel movie, because they took something unpredictable and making it predictable is kind of amazing in its own right. But is it amazing that when you take something really different and weird and make it more palpable for a Hollywood audience, is that really interesting in itself? And I guess that's something you'll have to think about or not think about, because your mind was so blown out of your ears from watching those awesome visuals, and maybe you should just be okay with that. But whether you're questioning it or not, I think you can still agree that this is an odd, weird trip of a movie that will at least push audiences to the astral plane visually that they didn't expect, even if the script is something they expected, but maybe it's not as expected as they expected it to be. So if you've seen Doctor Strange and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.